Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. You all have the advantage of joining the first session, the quoting and estimating session, as a part of our Velosio series. The series is called Streamlining the Quote to Cash Cycle for Project-Driven Firms, and it's going to go on over the next few months. If you like today's event, be sure to come back and join us for some of the others. So we're going to kick it off with James Thomas. James Thomas is our presenter for the day. I'm going to let him introduce himself. James?
Hi, Bill. Thanks very much for that. Yep, this is James Thomas, a chartered accountant by profession, and started my career in the Big Four and moved on to roles within a corporation, mainly in financial accounting and operational accounting, and then moved into consulting about 20 years ago. And ever since I started consulting, I've been in the services-based businesses or project-based businesses, which is really the topic of our webinar series. So I've had a chance to play a variety of roles during my time in consulting, from being a functional consultant, solution architect, but also a business owner and a trusted advisor. And today we are also very happy to have Eric, who is joining us to do the demonstration for us. Eric has also had a tremendous amount of experience in the services space. He's been in Microsoft Dynamics ecosystem for around 16 years and also played many different roles like product development and customer support and functional consulting, as well as solution architecture. So as we get ready to kick this off, our agenda, it's a pretty short agenda. We are going to cover many of these areas at a high level. And we're going to really start off by talking about project-driven companies. What is a project-driven company? They all look and feel different, but have many common characteristics. We're also going to spend a few minutes defining the quote-to-cash cycle and understand the challenges that many companies face in actually managing this cycle. And as we move closer towards our solution demonstration, we will touch on the benefits of a streamlined quote-to-cash cycle. And Eric will be able to take us through the solution, very specifically focused on quoting and estimating. And then we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A. So when you ask different people about project-based businesses, you get many different answers, primarily because they take different forms. Their business models sometimes closely align with the concept of managing customer engagements as projects, but for some companies, they're not as obvious. So we've got 4 examples here that are fairly different. Event management firms, they provide B2C services, provide logistics and coordination and scheduling of conferences and trade shows. In their business model, they're going to be dealing with people and equipment, as well as locations, and each event tends to be a project. Then we move to consulting firms. Consulting firms are the most obvious example of project-based businesses. It's different from many others because they tend to focus just on people. So intellectual capital management is key for them. Don't get as much involved in their business model managing equipment and materials, and it's mainly their people that they are managing and scheduling. Then we move to another example of audio video firms. So another B2C company providing design and installation services to commercial customers. And so you have a lot of technicians. You're dealing with a lot of product. In many cases, these products are highly specialized. Technology is rapidly moving. So you've got a lot of obsolescence that you have to keep up with. And many of these specialized equipment have long lead times. And so coordinating delivery dates with the dates of installation is very key. And each build out or each engagement is also a project. And finally, this may be very different from all the other ones that we've been speaking about, but oil and gas services. So in the oil and gas space, there's a lot of ancillary services that accompany the extraction of crude oil. And there are companies that help larger organizations with providing the production facilities, the labor, the equipment, and the materials to manage the oil rigs. So in that case, the service is actually being applied against a rig or a well, and you need to be able to manage the scheduling of people and technicians and drilling equipment, and each rig or well is a project. So this is very much our reality at Velosio. We have a varied set of project-based businesses as well. And here are a few customers. So if you look at Control Risks, Haley Aldrich, both are consultancies. One is a global risk consultancy. The other one's an environmental consulting and engineering firm. Then we have something very different, Sagent Lending Technologies. They offer technology solutions and professional services and business process outsourcing, BPOs, specific to national and regional banks. Then we have InTouch Solutions. This is a digital marketing agency that provide a full service agency network, including creative media sources and enterprise solutions, as well as data analytics. FIS, many of you have probably heard of FIS, Fidelity National Information Services, always better known by the abbreviation FIS, and they're a provider of financial service technologies and outsourcing services. And lastly is BPM, Berkowitz, Pollack and Brandt. They're actually a large CPA firm with multiple lines of business, from audit and assurance to tax and litigation services. So they all look different, don't they? But they all have a few things in common. So the underpinnings of their business model are very similar. Every engagement has a project or a plan or a schedule. You're dealing with three main cost elements: labor, materials, and equipment, each of which need to be scheduled and managed. Revenue is recognized either using time and materials or fixed fee cost accrual principles. They could be a hybrid as well, where you could have mixed projects. Percentage of completion is also in the mix. And then billing is based on milestones, progress billing, or even time and materials. But once again, every customer engagement is a project. So let's just spend a minute or so defining the quote to cash process. It's typically the most critical process in an organization because it's ultimately responsible for driving revenue. And despite its importance, it still remains one of the most poorly implemented processes in an organization. It really struggles to collaborate across disparate departments and applications. As you can see of these circles, they are really what exists in real life. They tend to be different departments struggling to coordinate activities amongst each other. And when that process is streamlined, businesses are really empowered to meet those increasingly customer complex demands, as well as make sure that risk and delays are not proportionately increased. And in every project-driven organization, the QTC cycle touches every department, every channel, and every customer. It starts with your buyer's intention to engage for a product or service and ends with cash in the bank for your organization. QTC obviously is not confined to project-based organizations, but today's webinar is specifically focused on that. This is our area of expertise at Velosio, and they also bring to the table some unique challenges that we will address today. I've really simplified what is an extensive and complex cycle into 5 areas: quoting and estimating, contracting, planning and execution, billing, and revenue recognition and cash collection. And today's focus is on quoting. And as I mentioned at the outset, we have a series addressing the entire life cycle. And each of those subsequent webinars will be focusing on one of these components. So as you can see from these steps, the QTC, the quote to cash process, touches many departments which are historically siloed. That leads to inefficient sales and operational processes. So optimizing these collaborative processes is key to increasing sales success and increasing profitability in project delivery. So just addressing the complexity of the solution and why things are so challenging. You can see the slide. It's very complicated. It's very confusing. It's a typical solution for project-based companies. You have silos of functionality from CRM and opportunity management, project management, resource management, subcontractors, so on and so forth. And it's intentionally confusing because that's the reality in many organizations. People are struggling to collaborate across these different departments and silos. So there's no wonder that there are many challenges. And we're just going to talk about four challenges today. There are many more, but just in the interest of time, we've selected these four. So with Excel, as we saw from the poll, it is actually the most popular estimating and quoting tool. It can lead to a lot of out-of-date information because it's siloed. The biggest problem with Excel is the fact that it's standalone. It's highly flexible. You can tailor Excel to do really whatever you want. And that's why most companies are hesitant to move off Excel. But they do suffer from the challenges of it being a siloed application. For example, you can't even look at resource capacity and availability through your estimating application because it's not integrated with your resource management tools. That leads to project management. The lack of any insight into your schedule and cost variances makes it difficult for project managers to manage the project while it's being executed. Things like earned value metrics, the impact of change orders, what does it do to my schedule? These are all important consequences of executing these dynamic projects. All of this leads to reduced profitability, especially if you've used a set of rates in your estimating application that are different from the actual rates being incurred through vendors and subcontractors and equipment suppliers. And it's difficult to make those decisions as to should I subcontract a part of my project or should I do it all myself? So the question of self-perform versus perform. And then all of this leads to some billing issues as well. There are many commitments made during the contracting process. Typically, it will outline your billing issues. And your inability to track accurately your project progress and your milestones can lead to issues with billing. So we talk about streamlining. Streamlining really means connected data. So the ability for data to flow to the right people at the right places at the right time is very important. And so what are some of the benefits of a streamlined or an integrated quoting and estimating process? So right off the bat, improved accuracy. So as you continue to use your quoting application, you're going to develop certain repeatable templates. Those templates can be refined through the process. And as you continue to use the system and you start gathering data, you'll be able to tweak those templates so you get best practices embodied in your templates. There's one version of the truth. When you're quoting, you also have to develop schedules in terms of delivery dates and delivery deadlines. And if you don't have a well-integrated suite of applications and tools, it's very difficult during your quoting process to accurately forecast when you'll have people available, when equipment's going to be available. And all of these pieces of information are very important when you're getting ready to move into a contract stage and you're going to embody these as contractual obligations. Margin simulation, you don't want to leave money on the table. So to be able to play around with the margins on the project, to be able to change cost components and revenue components, these are all very important facets to be very competitive. And increase your win rates, right? Better utilization of your resources, tighter control of your costs, more accurate scheduling result in a more competitive bid process. It helps you with a faster sales cycle and higher win rates. As I mentioned, you're always going to be making certain commitments during the quotation process. So billing accuracy is critical to making sure that you're billing on time for the right amount of money when using the right invoice formats. So as we get closer to Eric starting his presentation, let's just pause and have a high-level understanding of the solution that Eric is going to be presenting. So this is a great slide that encapsulates the entire, not just the solution, but the platform itself. So you can see here that Microsoft Dynamics is an app-oriented solution. So service, sales, operations, so on and so forth. Those are apps. So you can consume one of those apps or multiple apps. You can turn them on as you go along and mature, and as and when you need those. All of this is fully integrated and wrapped with data intelligence and Power BI, so full-blown analytics. We're able to consume structured data from within the D365 environment, but also unstructured data from Office 365. So we're able to pull in information using AI capabilities by reading your emails, reading your documents, and compiling all of that information into very strong predictive data points that will help users and owners of business to be able to be proactive and understand market sentiment and so on and so forth. And lastly, but not the least, is the Power Platform. So the Power Platform is really three components. It's Power Apps, Power BI, and Flow. So Power Apps is really a low-code set of tools and applications that will allow you to create new apps, enhancements to your existing processes. It allows you to build everything that is custom for your organization without incorporating a lot of development costs at all. Power BI, we talked about it, it's a very robust set of analytical tools. And then Flow is an engine that allows you to move data, not just between these applications, but external applications, even like things like Twitter and Facebook and Box.com for document management. So that's the solution that Eric is going to be showing you in a few minutes. Eric's demo is going to follow a certain structure, which is logical in the construction of a quotation. So we're first going to look at a work breakdown structure, which is nothing more than a work package, a list of tasks and sequences of activities that need to be carried out. It's going to incorporate different elements of costs, ranging from hours and items, equipment, as well as products. Then he's going into the actual estimating component to be able to look at formulae that can be used to make certain calculations, contingency factors that can be applied, moving on to bid management, tightening up that bid, looking at your margins, also looking at whether there are certain components of your bid that need to be subcontracted out. And all of this is going to, in some cases, involve equipment as well. So how do we incorporate equipment into our bid process? So with that, Eric, I'm going to turn this over to you. I'm going to have you share the screen.
Okay, thank you very much, James.
You're welcome.
And yes, indeed, let me continue for this solution demonstration flow. And for that, I will navigate into the system. And what you see here, this is Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance operations. And yeah, in the screen, it's fully web browser based. You see all the different workspaces, but we were focusing on, like James was saying, on the estimating and the quoting. So I made some favorites, and here are my project's quotations. And I'm working today in a audio video form, one of the projects that James has an example, and I'm going to build a quote to upgrade and remodel the main conference room. So let's start there. And for that, I will create a new quotation. I will put in the customer if we ask for that new remodel. I can give the quoted name, like upgrade and remodel the conference room. And at the bottom, I will address, okay, what would be the start date of this project? So what did the customer ask us? And maybe if he's in a hurry, he wanted to have it yesterday, of course, but now we have to have a realistic date. And let's say we put it on the start of Monday, the 19th of August. So in that way, I will start building my quotation. So I press OK, and the first part of the quotation has been created. But now, like James mentioned, there is a work breakdown structure in those projects needed. And I can add that work breakdown structure. So I press my edit mode, and well, for now it's empty, but yeah, looking through information, looking through templates, because probably as an audio video firm, we've did it before. So, and if we did it before, we probably have already a nice accurate template and that we can use. So let's start from the template. Let's create an audio video template that I have here. And if I press OK, then that template of a, probably one project in the past will be created. The only thing what now will happen is the question on the screen. Ask me, do you want to use the customer rates? Well, within Dynamics, you can say there are certain rates or prices that can be connected to a customer, a trade agreement. Do you want to update the template with those trade agreements we made with that customer? So in this case, I will say yes, and that one will be created.
I like that, Eric. So as rates change with your vendors, your quoting application is able to adopt the latest rate structure, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe there were
really
negotiations, with the customer, and then it will immediately adapt it. So that's indeed true. Now you see, based on the template, I see the different levels. So for an audio video project like this, we will start first with a discovery. What does the customer want? We go into a design and we go into planning, etc. And those are my project stages within this quotation. And we can execute on those. And within those project quotations, we have more detailed tasks, like the on-site consultation, but also in planning, you will see different elements there, which I will discuss a little bit later. For now, what we want to do in a project, we know what the customer wants and how he wants to be built, for instance. We can set it up already in the quote stage to figure out, okay, what is the best approach there? And for setup, we can decide, okay, how do you want to start actually getting money for the project? Are we quoting the customer on fixed price? Are we quoting him on time and material? Then of course we will give a rough estimate. And we have also a way of billing that we can specify for the entire project, what you already do now. Does the customer wants to be billed based on progress? So how far are we in the project? Or are we on 25%, on 50%? Do we understand the bill now? That's something that we can specify, of course, in the quoting. Now, going back to the different estimates lines as promised, I have, for instance, the scope and definition documentation. This is one of the more detailed tasks. And I assigned a category. That category is called for construction work. This category holds the price, so the cost price, but also the sales price. And if there's a customer specific rate, it will have the customer specific rate there. And those rates will show up in the bottom. You see, for instance, here I have an hour transaction type. The category, I wanted to have 24 hours for the this case for the scope and specification documentation, and it will cost me this amount, and this customer will pay the sales price. Now, what we also specify already in the quotation, who's going to do it? In this case, it's going to be a designer. And designers can have different levels, different roles. You see different lines where it says designer 1, designer level 2. Things like that can be added. And what's also, if I scroll to the right a little bit more, sometimes for reporting purposes, you want to, add, we can have different quotes, but you want for the report for the quote always the same. And then you can apply cost codes. And those are grouping of the different costs. And I will get back to you in a moment where you can see this in this quotation. So we saw hours. For instance, if we scroll a little bit down, we see, for instance, a flat screen. And for a flat screen, we can see that there are hour, transaction types, and items. So for this task to do, I need to see if this project or television is available. So per task, you can see, okay, I need this item. And later on in a different video, we'll show you how we can keep track of that item that is in time to be able to use for these tasks.
So Eric, what I'm seeing here is really cool functionality. So at the task level or the WBS level, we can incorporate different cost elements, right? So not just the labor, but we can incorporate cost of materials. If we're going to use equipment, we can add it to that line. So we don't really have to create multiple lines that say material or equipment, but instead we can go with the WBS structure and then allocate all the different cost components to each level. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Definitely, James, it's exactly what you're seeing. So for instance, on the audio systems, I have the example of a cost type equipment where I need to do some calibration for this job. In this case, I had to do calibration here, and then I can assign a calibration tool to execute this, and that's something that you see here. So I can have a calibration tool for calibrating the audio. So yeah, definitely that's the case.
That's very cool. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. And you mentioned before, James, that there were formulas there, because sometimes when you want to build a project, you want to calculate things. And on the demolition part and rebuild of soundproof panels, we can also specify, for instance, a calculation. And this is just an example of this line, but it can be added to many, many lines. And if you want to do demolition of in this case, maybe a room, then I can just by typing in the square meters or any variable that probably is good for your project. Say, for instance, I do 100 square meters. Then it's a big room, but then the system can calculate automatically for you by this formula how many hours it typically will take. Or maybe I need to have certain materials if you do a project and you want to have flooring or maybe a lot of walls, and then you can calculate that as well.
That's very nice, Eric. So you effectively you could predetermine certain assemblies, right, that you can pull into the bid so that you don't have to build it from scratch, but you can pull in predetermined assemblies that calculate the usage and the time and the material consumption and so on and so forth. Is that right?
That's right, indeed. And of course, there will be a lot of knowledge in these calculations as well.
Yeah.
So if you do it over and over again, then you can create very accurate quotes.
That's great.
What we can also do in a quotation, and it's also quite nice. See, for instance, this is a flat screen projector, and it has a projector television, which is quite expensive. So for certain customers, they want to see alternatives because they have that room that they want to, the conference room that they want to create, as in this example. And what we can also do is add, for instance, an alternative for that customer. So I could create a new task, and I could say, well, I will do an HD television as alternative. And that can be, again, created in a similar way. You select your category, which of course has an effect on costs, but the television itself maybe is much less labor than getting the production monitor on there. I can enter a cost code. like you see here, and I will just do a, well, I select something like this, administration, and that's it. And now for that same task, I can also select a new item, and that item will then be the, oh, oops, scroll down too far, the HD television, and we can assign these tasks as an alternative for our previous flat screen task. So what this does, it will give the customer an option of having an alternative on his quote as well. So as a salesperson, you can say, okay, I can offer you this or this, and then you can do some upselling as well in the quotation. What do you think about that, James?
I think that's really good. In the audio video example, that's particularly important because of how expensive items are. And as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, long lead times are also an issue that they have to deal with. And so maybe the equipment that the customer wants is too far out to meet the deadline. So it's nice for that functionality to be able to swap it out for something that's available. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So now let's save this quotation, and what I do next is generate, because this was an estimate, and I will generate it to the actual quote lines, and there you see them appearing in the bottom. And what's also important of a quote is reaching a deadline, seeing if you can deliver in time. And in a lot of cases also you want to already start doing a rough planning of your project. And that's something that you see here on your quotation. I can open a planning board, which is a graphical board. And there's already some predefined planning where you see finish starts elements, which you can also do, of course, with the other tasks. So you can move them around already a little bit. You can do different ways of planning where you say, for instance, I want to have these started all on start connected, and then you can plan these and move these around as well, and you see those following. And this is something, so not only the estimator is working, but also the planner can work. And even if you have a salesperson also involved into planning, by creating a planning in a later stage, which I will show you, you can see if I have enough capacity to reach that deadline. And this planning, of course, is already pretty good planning. Maybe it will be moved ahead, maybe it will be moved a little bit to the backwards or wherever, but this can be already a starting point for your planning of your project.
Eric, this is really cool. So just to recap here, you're still in the quotation process, but yet you're able to look at your capacity and your availability, not just of people, but also of equipment and so on and so forth. So as you go through the process of building out your quotation, you're able to provide fairly accurate deadlines and milestones to the customer. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah,
you're absolutely correct. And if you want to see the capacity, remember on the different tasks, I had those responsible roles. Now from my planning as well, I can also open in a capacity view, and you already see now, green means it's okay, red, we have overcapacity there's too much to ask. So in an early sales stage, you can already see that we could have end up in a problem because there's too much work. What's also nice of this solution is it can also add quotations. So not only running projects and actual projects, but can also add quotations that have a certain win rate. So if a quotation will be, say, for instance, higher than 70%, it can be shown as a capacity reduction in this form, and you have an idea of what's coming, so you don't give false promises to your customers when you if they say we're going to buy it, and you have a correct planning and a correct delivery date, and then you have a happy customer.
So this is almost like saying, you know, you want to load your current resource schedule with a soft load, right? So you're layering in any demand that may be coming from quotations that have a high percentage of closure, so you get a truer picture of your resource availability. I like that. That's very nice to be able to mix in hard and soft allocations into your resource schedule.
Yep. So now also what we wanted to do, and that is a little bit different because we also want to have an insight in costs and totals, of course, of a quotation. So for that, we again revisit our WS structure. Only this is the structure, to create the estimates. There are also other tab pages available. For instance, the cost and revenue. And I can run my calculation where you see all the figures popping up for the different cost rates and the bid value and the margin per level already. You also see appearing the cost codes on the individual lines, but like mentioned before, we have a specific tab page where you can report on that. Indexing and contingency also, in a lot of cases used, because if the customer is late with saying yes, then you could involve an index where we would say it's a little bit higher priced after a certain date. Those elements can be added here. And then on the cost code screen, you see the quotation, only then kind of pivoted. So in a different structure where I can see, okay, what are my costs on administration, what are my cost on and bid value on installation, and that's sometimes easier to approve a quotation because there's workflow, and if the quotation is finished, still a workflow job can be run where a sales manager could approve, and maybe the complex quote could be a little bit harder for him to read, but if he looks at a cost code representation, then it's maybe easier for him. Additional costs. This is a tab page looking in overhead costs. So for some companies, they want to have the overhead costs spread across all the individual lines. And some say, no, everything will be automatically, or maybe there will be a lump sum available. And that is something that you can specify per line to see, okay, how do you want to have the cost prepared? And the final tab page, subcontracting. Very important, as mentioned before, can I do the work ourselves, or do I need to add a subcontractor? And for that, from this screen, you can add subcontract orders or subcontracts to a vendor or a list of vendors that you have, and with that already create a subcontract, which value then, if you receive the value back from the subcontract, you can send it out and you can read the value of this contract back, and you can see that again in the subcontract value on this form. And later on, in one of the other demonstration videos that we do, we will show you how we can manage those subcontracts that we created. Final thing, what I wanted to demonstrate to you is the quotation statement. And the quotation statement, that is nice for salespersons. They can see the margin, for instance, on the different levels, what I'm doing on margin, and you see it here on items, and but that's something that you can see on the different levels. And what you can also do with this margin calculator, change maybe. In this case, it's a charge percentage. What will you charge over the cost price to get a competitive quote? So this is a playing ground where you can simulate the totals of your quotation, and this margin then will be recalculated across your entire quote. So this is getting the best margin and a competitive price, and of course you don't want to undersell. But you still want to have a competitive price, which is both nice for the customer but also for yourself. And that is something that you can then change on the different levels if you like. And that option is here. Okay, this was part of my demonstration of the system itself. I will switch back to you, James.
All right, so thank you for that demonstration, Eric. I know that was a short time to show so much of rich functionality. And I know in my years of consulting and implementing many of these types of solutions that affect the QTC cycle, there were a lot of headaches that we would have been able to overcome if we had this solution at that time. So nicely done, Eric. And I'm going to pivot away from the solution and really talk about, it's all well and good having these solutions out there, but how do we implement those? And you see an unfamiliar term here called AXIO. AXIO is something that very much differentiates Velosio from many other system integrators and consulting firms. Our focus is really on implementation efficiency, reduction of risk, and of course, success of the implementation. So over and above, the standard processes that many firms deploy in the implementation, we have really addressed some of the challenges in an implementation. So AXIO is a set of tools and processes and data packages, but it also has additional functionality. You can see in the top left quadrant, we list some additional features that AXIO provides and brings to the table. AXIO is layered into our methodology and our processes to help with the implementation. It really reduces your total cost of ownership in some engagements by over 50% over a longer period of time. But it also has immediate impacts on your implementation. So if I just quickly switch to AXIO, so what you see on screen here is just one component of AXIO. We call them BPMs, business process models. And those of you that have gone through implementations in the past, you know that the implementations team, the first thing they want to do is get to understand your processes and define it. So you go through a fairly long period of defining your processes, making sure it aligns with the solution being implemented, come up with a gap fit analysis. So we fast track that process by starting off with a fully configured solution. So for example, if we look at, as you can see, this covers a lot of the financial modules, as well as project accounting and HR. But let's just focus on something that folks are find it easy to relate to, the GL, right? So just click on Create Main Account with Validations. And this takes us to a flowchart that is fully customizable, but more importantly, you can embed your Visio process flows within the application. So these are always fully customizable. They migrate from system version upgrade to system version upgrade, and it helps you embody your best practices within the solution. So when I clicked on this, you'd see that the process details will show up on the right-hand side. So these process steps, optionally, you can incorporate videos, but these process steps, you can see there are a number of steps here, 25 steps in all, in order to create a main account in the GL and validate that it's accurate. These process steps will be exposed within your finance and operations module as a guided tour or as a learning tool or an instructional course for your users, existing users and new users, to be able to participate in the actual implementation of the overall solution. So let's just go back to the slide deck. So that's why we call this is an implementation on steroids. And so to bring it all back to the overall ecosystem, AXIO and our delivery services are core to the overall solution. So you can select a great platform in D365, utilize some great functionality that Eric was able to show you. But if these are not implemented in an efficient manner, in a successful manner with lowest risk possible, then you have some red flags in your implementation. So this is really a differentiator for Velosio in our implementation cycle. So rapid deployment, additional feature sets, best practices, and a lot of our industry expertise are actually embedded in those business process models. And so it brings us to the services element of these solutions, right? Velosio, you can see from the numbers across the top, they speak for themselves. A lot of experience over many years, very specifically focused to industry, an awful lot of successful projects and clients. And we offer a broad portfolio of solution and services, because a comprehensive platform like D365 really demands a systems integrator that provides a comprehensive set of services. And so you can see, in addition to all of the different apps that are available, we also offer public and private cloud deployment models, HR capabilities as well as the broader Power Platform capabilities. So, Bill, with that, we're at the end of our presentation, and we have left a little bit of time for Q&A.
Yeah.
And so if there are any questions out there, this is a good time for us to tackle some of those.
Okay, yeah, we have 3 or 4 questions. I'm not sure if you can get to all of them within this event, but hey guys, I want to say great job. I learned a lot today. It's pretty exciting stuff. I was surprised that there was so much content on just one piece of that quote to cash cycle. I'm excited to see what you have in store for us on the rest. James, here's the first question. I'm not sure if this is for you or Eric. It says, what's the process in your application after the quote or bid is awarded?
So Eric, you want to take that? Because I think what we've concentrated on is the actual build out of the quotation, but I'm sure there's curiosity in terms of, hey, what happens to this bid after you've won the job, right? So maybe you can take that.
Yeah, definitely I can take that. I can also show that in the system what will be after that. But what we'll do is, if the quote is rewarded, we will go through a workflow. And after that workflow, we promote the entire quote into a project. So everything that you've done in the quote, creating sub-projects, creating tasks, making item forecast, making equipment forecast, already that pre-planning, it will be transferred in the quotation. So no more typing, and immediately a project will be created. And also the project can take over the, for instance, the item that are needed, where to retrieve it from.
So in other words, Eric, a lot of the work that you do in building out the quotations is not lost, right? Everything transfers into an actual project and a project plan and the schedules, right?
Definitely, yeah. And even so including the planning, but also if you have alternatives, only the awarded alternative, the awarded option, will be transferred.
Yeah, Eric, I can't tell you how many times I've done implementations where, they create, very comprehensive quotation, on an Excel that's like a monster sheet, right? So many tabs, so many calculations, you don't even know if everything is working right. But anyway, all of that data then have to be re-entered, right? They have to create the project. They have to now go in and look for resources, who is available, who's the PM, what are the materials, are the materials of, it's just,
the procurement department can create, is busy 2 days of entering items in that other system,
Yeah, that's great. Bill, any other questions?
There are, and guys, I want to say, as a being more on the buyer side of systems like this, I can tell you as you go through these processes and you answer questions and you provide information, you do everything you can to get a partner set up to deliver what you want. and then as you move forward and new people get involved and they're asking you the same questions over and over, and I've got to do that input over and over from my side, it's really exciting to see a system that kind of carries that information forward dynamically instead of just picking and choosing.
Yeah, that's right.
So next question is, how do you manage change orders?
I see that somebody is already thinking in the future there.
Yeah.
No, how would you manage change orders? There is a also if you have a project, there's a change order module within the system where you can start a change order on the entire project, or maybe on a subset, where you can go through a control change and even maybe validate with the customer if this is what he really wanted, and if the change is okay and everybody accepts, then we can promote it again to the project, and then your project will be upgraded accordingly. Of course, what changes also do, and I just thought about that, costs. It can affect cost, of course, as well. So it will have an effect on your budget. And we will have information also in our system to see, okay, if there are pending changes that are coming, or if there are approved changes, and then you can see the effect on the budget, if it would be lower or higher. Maybe there was a little bit of money and they did want the HD television, they will still go for the projector television, and then the option, the more expensive option will be chosen then. So so there's a full module inside the system as well.
I like that, because change orders are just part of the process, right? I mean, almost every one of these projects have changes to it. That's a guaranteed constant is change, and the ability to see the impact, not just on the budget, but also the schedule, right? Especially if you have folks that need to go out to your customer site for installation, you really need to be able to coordinate the delivery dates from your suppliers to the times that your installers are going to be on the job site. And so the impact of these changes and how it affects the way you schedule your people and your POs, I think that's really good visibility. Yeah, I like that, Eric. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have two more.
Yeah.
John says, we use a lot of subcontractors, so do you have an RFQ process?
Yeah, Eric, you want to take that too?
Sure. Built in Dynamics Finance for 365 for finance operations, there is indeed an RFQ process where you can utilize for items that you need, but also for your subcontractors to find the best subcontractor do, for instance, that painting job.
Yeah, that's good. So an electronic RFQ process. RFQs are very common in this space, right? And to be able to do it electronically by reducing the amount of data entry and getting a lot of transparency and visibility into the process, I like that. That's very nice. And I think you said there was one more question, Bill?
Yeah, it's almost like this one was lined up for that one, but it comes from somebody else. It says, can we print a quote directly from the system?
Yes, D365 can output customer-facing documentation in a variety of different formats. Quotation printing is no different. You can view it on screen, you can make adjustments, but you can also put them out into a quote, potentially even PDF and email the quotation and any attachments that are required to be sent. So yeah, fully paperless process is possible there. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Yeah. So we're about 3 minutes from the end of our time slot. We don't have any more questions right now. So listen, I want to thank everyone for joining today. Especially want to thank James and Eric. You guys did a fantastic job of taking us through the content. Anybody who would like to see another event in this series, as we said earlier, there's several planned. The next event is actually, you can see it on your screen, is project planning, scheduling, and operations. That's going to be on August 27th. So we're going to do these on the last Tuesday of every month. I do want to remind you, though, you do not have to wait until the last Tuesday of the month. If you have questions for either of these guys, if you want to explore new systems for your company, click on the reply button to any of the emails that you've sent, or you can reach out to us directly, info@velosio.com, or call us at the number on your screen. we'll get you in connect with somebody that can help you get things figured out. Again, thank you for attending, and this will end our webcast for today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.